Welcome ladies and gentlemen, it's Targran. I'm here to bring you yet another episode of Lore of League of Legends. This time around we prepared a pair of champions that are bound to each other by their past. They both have been captured by Noxus and forced to take part in bloody fights on the arena, known as the Fleshing. I present to you the lore of Alistar, the Minotaur, and Xin Zhao, the Seneschal of Demacia. Enjoy. Long before the creation of the League, crowds of Valoran looked for other sources of entertainment. They've always been drawn to the bloodshed that gladiators could always provide, and arenas have always been full of people hoping to watch someone get brutally murdered, just for their enjoyment. Most major cities had their own arenas, some harder than others. The Fleshing spectacle held in Noxus was perhaps the most brutal of them all. In regular arena fights, spectators could see how gladiators fight each other in one-on-one fights, sometimes small battle groups, or in rare occasions, they'd face off against wild beasts. The Fleshing was different. Gladiators would start one-on-one fights, but for every opponent they defeated, the number of enemies they were to fight next would be increased. Each day a few fights took place where the competitor fought until he was murdered, or able to defeat his attackers. Eventually each gladiator would meet his end, but some of them taking it with pride, facing off against 20, 30, sometimes even 50 men at a time. Even if their opponents were not trained for the arena exhausted, it was still a great achievement to survive against such crowds. There was one man, however, who used name Viscero. He stood up against anything that the Noxians could throw at him. He'd forged his body in battle and hardened it as much as he could. He trained day after day to ensure his survival at the arena, but someone didn't like it. Someone did not enjoy watching how Viscero faced against the strongest that the Fleshing had to offer and defeated them. Sometimes he was heavily wounded, after blocking an attack with his own skull or arms. Sometimes he was unable to walk on his own after the fight. But yet, he was always victorious. News of this man had reached every corner of Valoran where people were at least slightly interested in gladiator fights, and he had been praised and acknowledged. The news had even reached the old King Jarvan II, who had sent his spies and learned that Viscero, or Xin Zhao, as the man was really called, was to face 300 men at once. This was clearly meant to be the end of his career, before he became too dangerous. Jarvan had heard the news and decided to give Xin Zhao another option. He's infiltrated the arena, offering to free the gladiator in exchange for his service to Demacia. Xin hesitated, but he understood that it was his only chance not only to escape death, but also take revenge on his masters. He was also flattered by the fact that the king himself came to his rescue. He couldn't ignore that. Viscero, as well as the 300 men he was meant to have faced, had been freed from their cages under cover from pre-arranged assault on one of the Noxian outposts, right outside of the city. Getting a few hundred men out of the city state without being noticed was impossible, and everyone realized the risk, but no man was willing to waste an opportunity like that. They ran for their lives. They ran for their freedom. Noxian soldiers had been on the pursuit, and they'd slain a few dozen prisoners before they reached the city gates. Others had managed to run unharmed. During this retreat, Xin Zhao had spotted a poisoned dart meant for the king, Jarvan II, and had blocked it with his own body. The sacrifice that he'd made earned him a lifelong spot at the king's side, where he'd served until Jarvan's death. Now, he serves Jarvan III, son of the man who gave him freedom, and he's proud to serve the Light Shield dynasty. He's an enigmatic figure, rarely speaking, just watching everything from behind the king's back. Some have different theories about the man's origins, but Xin Zhao does not care for them. He's in Demacia to repay his debt by offering his life to those that gave it back to him. He now fights on the fields of justice for revenge on Noxus, and to honour the legacy of the man who gave purpose to his life, Jarvan II. Alistar is the mightiest of Minotaur warriors to ever emerge from the wild tribes of the Great Barrier Mountains. This mighty beast has sacrificed his life to defend his tribe from dangers of the outside world. He's pushed back anyone who threatened the existence of the village. He's slain anyone who meant to harm his people. That was, until the army of Noxus came. Kieran Darkwill, son of the Noxian general, had been leading a military expedition, and on his way he stumbled across the Minotaur village that he'd read about in so many reports. A purple-skinned Minotaur had stood vigil over it, making it impossible to approach the village. The young tactician had come up with a plan that would allow him to take revenge for all the Noxians slain there. He'd formed a small squad that was meant to take charge at the village and get attention from the Minotaur. They were to start a fight and lure Alistar away from his people. Once he was locked in the battle, the Noxian elite would charge into the village and kill everyone inside. Everything worked perfectly, and soon, Alistar's tribe was gone from Valoran. The plan would be perfect, but Kieran forgot to take one thing into account. The blind rage of the Minotaur that has allowed him to follow the trails of the regiment and slay every single one of Kieran's soldiers. The best of Noxians brutally murdered and torn apart by Alistar's bare hands. Hundreds of soldiers have fallen this day, giving the young commander enough time to return home and beg for reinforcements. Soldiers were not enough. It took some of Noxus's most skilled spellcasters to bind Alistar in chains and forcefully bring him to Noxus, where he was to be bound underneath the arena and used as another competitor for the fleshing. The endless battle always needed new competitors, and since Viscero was gone, there was no prominent figures that Noxans could cheer for. Left with no choice, Alistar has agreed with his fate. He has fought as he was told to. There was nothing else he could do, no tribe to protect, no home to return to. He was alone, imprisoned and used as a tool to entertain the masses. Alistar's noble soul began to slowly rot. It became weak and twisted. He was being driven closer to insanity, due to blood that he was shed for no reason. There was just one thing that kept him sane, a young servant girl who had found his cell underneath the arena. She came to Alistar every day to chat with him and cheer him up. She was the only friend he'd got in a long time, and it was the only light that his mind had seen in a long time. After brutal fights, he'd been returning underground just to meet with his little friend. She was the one that had arranged his escape as well. It wasn't easy to hide a purple-skinned Minotaur in a huge city, but the young girl had her connections amongst those who served at the arena. She secured a way out of the building out onto the streets. There he had managed on his own, but being a massive powerful beast who had been doing nothing but murdering people for the past years, he wasn't worried about that. Alistar made his way out of the city back into the Great Barrier Mountains. He had no ideas for his future, but at least it was his life once again. That's when he'd heard about the League of Legends. At first he just wanted to fight and get to every Noxian he could, but soon after he realised that the position of a champion had earned him fame. Fame that came with the power to vocalise his concerns and story of his life. He became an advocate for those who were abused by the Noxian government. Alistar tends to call to light things that he heard Noxian soldiers bragging about, things that were meant to be a secret. Alistar does not only interfere with Noxus's position though, he's often seen helping those less fortunate than himself, doing a lot of charitable work that has earned him many awards and gratitude of those he'd helped. That side of his personality is an interesting contrast to the pure unbound rage he brings to the fields of justice every day. And that's all we prepared for you this time around. Let us know if you like this video by pressing the like button, leaving your feedback in the comment section below, and sharing this video around. If you enjoyed this one in particular, feel free to add your video to your favourites as it helps us out a great deal. We do also happen to have a Facebook page that we try and maintain it more actively, so feel free to like us over there as well. And as always, I'll see you next time.